Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be taking a look at the world of hacking.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah. So you guys shared an excerpt with us, and it has 10 notable hackers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we're going to go through it and kind of unpack what made each of these hackers stand out from the rest.
Heck,
And what their skills were, and basically just learn more about this whole world of cybersecurity through the lens of these 10 figures.
I love that idea.
Yeah, it should be fun.
Hacking is such a fascinating topic.
Yeah, it is.
It really is.
So I guess before we even dive into the individual stories, maybe it would be helpful to kind of set the stage a little bit.
Yeah.
Because we're going to see terms like black hat and white hat and gray hat hackers.
Right.
So what's the difference? Like what are those terms all about?
Well, think of it this way. A black hat hacker is your stereotypical cyber criminal. They're driven by personal gain, whether that's stealing data or disrupting systems, that kind of thing. White hat hackers, on the other hand, they use their skills for good. So they're helping companies identify and fix vulnerabilities.
So like the ethical hackers?
Exactly. They're the ethical hackers. Now, gray hats, they kind of live in that in-between space.
So they're like the ones who are a little bit questionable?
Yeah, a little bit, maybe. They might expose vulnerabilities, maybe even without permission,
Ah.
but their goal is ultimately to improve security.
Okay, so they have good intentions.
Yeah, they have good intentions, even if their methods might be a little bit iffy.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
All right, so with that framework in mind, let's jump into it.
Okay.
Let's start with, I guess, a figure who really embodies this whole evolution of hacking. So Kevin Mitnick.
Go.
Yeah. He was known back in the 80s and 90s as the world's most wanted hacker. And he was really famous for his mastery of social engineering.
Oh, social engineering.
Yeah.
It's so interesting.
Yeah. What is social engineering?
Social engineering is basically just about manipulating people into giving up sensitive information.
Yeah.
And Mitnick was such a master of persuasion. He could trick people into revealing their passwords, their access codes, anything he needed.
So it's almost like a psychological hack as opposed to a technical hack.
Precisely, yeah.
Interesting.
And his exploits really force companies to rethink their approach to security because they realize that often the weakest link isn't the technology itself.
Right.
It's the humans using it.
Yeah.
yeah.
So what happened to Mitnick? Where is he now?
Well, after serving some time for his crimes, he actually became a security consultant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he used all that knowledge of hacking to help companies strengthen their defenses.
Wow, that's a pretty crazy career change.
It is.
It's interesting. So I guess it begs the question of, can someone who exploited systems for personal gain
Yeah.
then genuinely shift their mindset and become a force for good in the world of cybersecurity?
I mean, it's a complex question, right? And Mitnick's case is just one piece of the puzzle. But it shows us that the line between a black hat and a white hat, it isn't always fixed.
Right.
People can evolve.
Okay, that's really interesting. Okay, next up, we have a group that needs no introduction.
Anonymous.
Ooh, anonymous.
Yeah. So they're not just one person, right? They're more like a decentralized collective
Yeah.
of hacktivists, and they're just totally shrouded in mystery.
Right,
And they're just known for their bold actions.
What's so captivating about Anonymous is their anonymity, right? No one knows who they are, and that adds to this whole air of mystique and allure.
Yeah, and power, for sure.
Exactly.
So they're often described as kind of like digital Robin Hoods,
Right.
right? They target those that they perceive as corrupt
Right.
or unjust, but their methods are definitely not subtle.
No, not at all. They're known for those distributed denial of service attacks, the DDoS attacks.
Yeah,
They essentially flood a website with traffic to make it crash. Like, imagine thousands of people trying to all enter a store at the exact same time.
right.
It's just going to be impossible to function.
Yeah, so it overloads it.
Exactly. That's what a DDoS attack does to a website.
And they also engage in website defacement, replacing the site's content with their own messages.
Yeah, so like digital graffiti.
Right, exactly.
Right.
But with a much broader reach.
Right.
And their impact is undeniable. They've brought attention to social and political issues. They've challenged institutions.
Yeah.
They've even exposed wrongdoing. But there's also, a big ethical debate surrounding their methods,
Yeah.
especially because there's potential for collateral damage.
Right.
So that's an ongoing debate.
Yeah, it's like, where do you draw the line between raising awareness for a cause, which is, I guess, their intention, and then causing harm in the process?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Okay, next up we have Gary McKinnon.
Okay.
So this UK-based hacker made headlines for breaking into NASA and US military systems.
Wow.
Yeah, but his motive was very different from Anonymous. His stated goal was to find evidence of
Oh,
UFOs.
wow. So he was hacking into these highly secure government systems, all in the pursuit of extraterrestrial life.
Yeah. I mean, so I guess some might see that as a harmless quest for truth, like, oh, he's just looking for aliens.
Yeah.
But it did cause significant damage and led to a long extradition battle.
Right.
It really makes you wonder, at what point does curiosity cross over into criminal activity?
Yeah. McKinnon's case is a prime example of that very question.
Yeah.
Like, his intent might have been different,
Right.
but the consequences were very real.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's move on. So the next group we're going to look at is LulzSec.
LulzSec.
So unlike Anonymous, who often operate with a kind of seriousness,
Right.
LulzSec really seemed to embrace this theatrical side of hacking
They did, yeah.
and revel in the mischief and notoriety.
LulzSec was all about high-profile targets, public boasts, and a good dose of humor.
Right.
They claimed that their hacks were all in good fun, for the lulz,
Yeah, for the lulz.
but they were also exposing some serious security flaws in the process. So even though they might not have had these, activist goals like Anonymous, their actions still had a very real impact.
Yeah.
They forced companies to take security more seriously, and they showed how even a small group of skilled hackers can cause major disruption.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Mhm.
So their legacy is, I guess, kind of a mix of amusement and cautionary tale, right?
Exactly.
Because they were funny, but also, like you were saying, they kind of forced a wake-up call for companies to be like, hey, we need to take security seriously.
Yeah, vulnerabilities are everywhere,
Yeah, they made it very clear.
They really did.
Okay, so next we're going to talk about Adrian Lameau.
Okay.
So he gained notoriety for breaking into the systems of major companies, but he also became a strong advocate for something called ethical disclosure.
Yes. Ethical disclosure.
So what is that?
So ethical disclosure is all about revealing vulnerabilities to companies so that they can fix them before, malicious actors come along. It's kind of like being in a security consultant, but without being hired, and sometimes even without permission.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Lameau's story is interesting because he started out by exploiting vulnerabilities for his own gain.
Right.
But then it seemed like he shifted towards, like you were saying, using his skills to highlight weaknesses and encourage better security.
Exactly. So his transition really raises those questions about the motivations and ethics of a gray hat hacker. Like, are they ultimately helping or hindering cybersecurity efforts?
Right.
It's a complex issue.
Yeah, the line between, I guess, good and bad in the hacking world can get really blurry.
It really can.
And speaking of blurry lines, let's talk about a hacker who's shrouded in mystery and controversy, Guccifer 2.0.
Oh, Guccifer 2.0.
Yeah, so this is where things get really interesting because this is where hacking intersects with politics, and it raises some serious questions about cybersecurity.
Yeah, and in the digital age.
Yeah. So Guccifer 2.0 is allegedly linked to the 2016 U.S. presidential election and the hack of the Democratic National Committee.
Right.
So, we're not here to take sides or speculate on motives or anything like that.
Of course.
But what's undeniable is that this event sparked intense debate about foreign interference in elections
For sure.
and how vulnerable democratic processes are to these cyber attacks.
Yeah, the impact was huge. I mean, it fueled political debates. It raised concerns about the integrity of elections.
Yeah.
And it really just highlighted how we need to, ramp up cybersecurity
Yeah.
to protect these democratic institutions.
Yeah. Guccifer 2.0's true identity remains a mystery,
It does.
but their actions really showed how hacking can have a ripple effect that impacts events on this, global scale.
Absolutely.
So that was really interesting. Okay, next up we have DarkSide.
DarkSide.
So they're a ransomware group, which basically means that they hold data hostage until a ransom is paid.
Yeah.
But what made them so infamous was their targeting of critical infrastructure.
Right.
Like they attacked the Colonial Pipeline in the U.S.,
Right.
and it caused major disruption to fuel supplies. And it highlighted just how vulnerable these essential services are to these attacks.
It really did, yeah.
And ransomware, too, is a growing threat, right? It's not just businesses, but individuals and national security.
And it has real-world consequences.
Yeah.
It's not just something happening on a computer screen somewhere.
Right, right. It's interesting. So DarkSide, they really pushed the boundaries of what's acceptable, I guess, even in the world of cybercrime,
They did.
because they showed how hackers can exploit these vulnerabilities in critical infrastructure for their own profit.
Yeah. And with potentially devastating consequences.
Right. So that's really scary. Okay, next up, we have Albert Gonzalez.
Okay.
He masterminded one of the largest credit card theft operations in history.
It was massive.
Yeah. What was it called?
Operation Get Rich or Die Trying.
Operation Get Rich or Die Trying.
Yeah. He ended up stealing over 170 million credit card numbers from major companies.
Wow.
It was mind-boggling.
Yeah. So this is a great example of how hacking isn't just some abstract digital game, right?
Yeah.
Like, it has tangible consequences.
Absolutely.
It can impact your finances and your sense of security.
Yeah, Gonzalez's actions really forced the financial industry to reevaluate their security measures. You know, it was a wake-up call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing how the actions of, I guess in this case, a group of hackers can have this ripple effect
It's true.
that forces these industries to adapt and evolve. Okay, so not all hackers are driven by greed, right? Some of them use their skills to protect us
Right.
from the very threats we've been talking about. So that brings us to Marcus Hutchins, also known as Malware Tech.
Oh, a hero.
Yeah, a true hero.
He stopped the WannaCry ransomware attack.
Yeah, which was rapidly spreading across the globe, right?
It was.
Yeah, he found a kill switch in malware
He did.
and prevented it from doing further damage.
Yeah, he saved countless businesses and organizations from being crippled by that attack.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's a perfect example of a white hat hacker, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Using his skills for good.
Yeah, a digital guardian.
Yeah. And speaking of pioneers in cybersecurity, to round out this section, we have Tsutomu Shimomura.
Okay.
So he's a renowned security expert and one of the original white hat hackers, I guess you could say.
Right.
And he played a key role in capturing Kevin Mitnick.
He did.
So bringing an end to the reign of the world's most wanted.
That's right.
So his career has been dedicated to understanding hacking tactics, right?
Yeah.
And figuring out ways to counter them.
He's a true expert in the field, respected by both hackers and security professionals, which is a pretty amazing feat.
Yeah. So his story shows that the world of cybersecurity is this constant game of cat and mouse.
It is.
Right. It's this battle of wits.
Yeah.
And it's just fascinating how often those on opposing sides end up like sharing knowledge and contributing to the evolution of this whole field.
It's a complex ecosystem, but it's vital to the security and stability of our increasingly digital world.
Right.
It really is. Welcome back to our exploration of the hacking world.
So we've seen just how diverse this landscape really is. I mean, from those seeking fame and fortune to like those just driven by a thirst for knowledge, it's not as simple as just good versus bad.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about like the motivations behind all these actions. What makes a hacker tick? Like what drives them to push these boundaries of technology and ethics?
Yeah, good question.
So let's go back to Kevin Mitnick for a second. He went from, world's most wanted to security consultant.
Yeah.
So was that really driven by a genuine change, or was it just a clever career move?
Yeah, it makes you wonder.
It does. I mean, we can never truly know what's in someone's heart, but Mitnick's later work did seem to indicate a shift in his thinking.
Okay.
He started writing books about social engineering, not to teach people how to exploit it, but to, raise awareness of its dangers.
Right.
So maybe there's an element of wanting to give back, to use his knowledge to protect others from the kind of exploits that he once engaged in.
Yeah. So almost like taking that power, like that knowledge, that superpower and
Yeah.
using it
For good.
Yeah.
It is kind of like a superpower, isn't it?
Yeah.
That ability to see things that other people miss,
Yeah.
to understand these systems in a way that most people can't even imagine.
And to exploit those.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like any superpower, it can be used for good or for evil.
Yeah.
It all depends on the individual, right?
Right. Okay, let's talk about Anonymous for a second.
Okay.
Their whole ethos is built on this idea of fighting injustice and challenging authority.
Yeah. Like digital vigilantes.
Yeah, exactly. So there's definitely a strong sense of idealism there.
Absolutely.
Like this belief that they can use their skills to make a real difference in the world.
Right. They target those they perceive as corrupt
Yeah.
or oppressive.
Mm-hmm.
And their goal is to expose wrongdoing, hold the powerful accountable.
But their tactics can cause like a lot of disruption, right?
They can't.
DDoS attacks, website defacement.
Right.
So do you think that collateral damage is justified in their minds?
It's really hard to say because Anonymous isn't a single entity with a single voice.
Yeah.
It's a decentralized movement
Mm-hmm.
with all sorts of participants and varying levels of commitment to the cause.
Yeah, so it's hard to even get a read on their motivations.
It is. It's not a traditional organization, so there isn't a clear hierarchy or set of rules.
Right.
It's constantly evolving. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about Gary McKinnon. His obsession with UFOs
Yes.
led him to hack into NASA and U.S. military systems.
Right.
So what do you think we can learn from his case about the psychology of hacking?
Well, it definitely highlights the power of curiosity.
Okay.
For him, it wasn't about personal gain. It wasn't about malicious intent. It was about a quest for knowledge, like this burning desire to uncover what he believed to be hidden truths.
Yeah, so he almost approached hacking as this form of research, right?
He did, yeah.
Even though it was illegal and very disruptive.
Very. And it makes you wonder, like, where are the limits of curiosity? At what point does it become criminal,
Right.
And how do we balance, like, the potential benefits of discovery with the very real risks of, unauthorized access?
Right. So intention matters, but impact matters too.
Exactly. It's not just about, the technical act itself, but also the potential consequences, intended or unintended.
Right. Okay. Shifting gears a little bit to a group that seemed to approach hacking with a much more playful attitude. LeadSec.
Yeah.
What were they after? What was their deal?
LeadSec thrived on mischief and notoriety. They want to expose those security flaws and kind of embarrass those in power,
Yeah.
all while having a good laugh in the process.
Yeah, their name itself, LeadSec, kind of suggests that, right?
It does, yeah.
LeSex meaning laughter and sec for security.
Right.
Yeah, there's a certain irreverence there towards the whole concept.
Absolutely. They seem to relish in the absurdity of it all.
Yeah.
Using humor and satire to highlight the vulnerabilities of systems that were supposed to be impenetrable.
Yeah.
But underneath all that laughter, they were still exposing those serious weaknesses.
Right, forcing organizations to take notice.
Exactly.
It's interesting, right? These seemingly frivolous actions actually had real-world consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really speaks to the unpredictable nature of hacking. You never know how a single exploit or like a well-timed leak might impact the world.
Right. Okay, let's talk about Adrian Lemot.
Okay.
He started out as a black hat hacker, right? Exploiting vulnerabilities for personal gain, but later he became a big proponent of that ethical disclosure.
Yeah, he did. So Lamo's story is a good reminder that people and their motivations, they can evolve,
Yeah.
He started out by testing those limits, maybe driven by that sense of intellectual challenge, or maybe a desire to prove his skills.
Yeah, he broke into the systems of some major company.
He did.
Even lived off the grid for a while.
He did, to evade authorities.
Yeah.
But eventually, his perspective seemed to shift. He started to see the potential harm in his actions and those ethical implications.
Right.
So that transition to, advocating for responsible disclosure really suggests that he was becoming more aware of the impact hacking could have on individuals and society.
So the hacking world isn't just black and white.
It's not. There are shades of gray.
Okay.
And individuals can move between those shades as they, gain experience and their perspectives change.
Right. So it's almost like a testament to the possibility of redemption, right?
It is. It's a reminder that even those who, operate in the shadows can find their way to the light.
Okay. So it highlights the importance of that dialogue, that
Yeah.
collaboration between hackers and security professionals.
Absolutely. Because the best way to protect ourselves from these threats is to try to understand, how hackers think, what motivates them,
Yeah.
how they operate.
So bridging that gap.
It's exactly bridging that gap between those who build systems and those who try to break them.
And speaking of bridging gaps, let's talk about Guccifer 2.0.
Ooh, Guccifer 2.0. This is where hacking meets politics and international intrigue.
Yeah. So again, we're not here to endorse any political views or speculate on their identity or anything like that.
Of course.
But their actions, allegedly linked to that 2016 U.S. election hacking, really raised some big questions, right?
Huge questions.
About the motivations and the implications of nation-state hacking.
Absolutely. Because Guccifer 2.0's actions, they weren't about personal gain, They weren't about mischief. They were about disrupting these political processes, sowing discord, and potentially influencing the outcome of an election.
Yeah, so a whole different level of hacking
It's a
here.
whole different level.
Yeah, with way bigger implications.
It makes you wonder, what role does technology play in shaping global politics?
Yeah.
And is it ethical to use hacking as a tool of statecraft?
Yeah.
And, how vulnerable are our democratic institutions in this digital age?
Yeah. It's pretty unsettling.
It is. Dexiver 2.0 was a wake-up call. The stakes are getting higher, and those lines between cybercrime and cyber espionage, even cyber warfare, are getting really blurry.
And that brings us to DarkSide,
Yeah.
right? The ransomware group that targeted the Colonial Pipeline.
Yeah. It wasn't just about profit with them. It was about disrupting these essential services and causing widespread panic.
And that really highlighted how vulnerable our critical infrastructure is.
It did. It showed how hackers, motivated by greed or maybe political agendas, can exploit weaknesses in those systems that we rely on every day.
Right. So again, the consequences are huge, right?
They are.
It can impact entire communities,
Absolutely.
even national security.
Yeah, DarkSide's actions really force us to think about those bigger questions like, do we have strong enough defenses against ransomware? What role should governments play in protecting this infrastructure?
Right.
And what are the ethical implications of targeting these essential services,
Yeah. So it's a really complex and evolving landscape that requires, constant vigilance and collaboration.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what makes this whole exploration of hacking so fascinating, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about the technology itself, it's about the people, the motivations, the implications of their actions.
So understanding the human element.
The human element, the choices we make, the consequences we face.
Welcome back for the final part of our deep dive into the world of hacking.
We've come a long way, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. From those early days with like Kevin Mitnick and that kind of, mischievous side with Lil Sec
Right.
to the shadowy world of like Anonymous and hacktivists.
Yeah.
And now, the high stakes realm of cybercrime. And really, we're going to zoom out now and look at the force that's been reshaping this whole landscape.
Nation states.
Yeah.
Yeah, governments around the world have really realized the power of hacking
Right.
as a tool for espionage, sabotage, and even warfare.
Yeah, it adds a whole new level of complexity,
Yeah,
doesn't
I
it?
did.
Because now we're not talking about individual hackers anymore.
Right.
We're talking about like state-sponsored actors with tons of resources.
Yeah, sophisticated capabilities.
Yeah.
I mean, think about Guccifer 2.0 again. That incident really brought this issue of nation-state hacking into the spotlight.
Yeah, it did.
It showed how these cyber attacks can be used to, interfere with elections.
Yeah.
So discord globally.
It's a scary thought that a foreign government could potentially sway an election.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's not just elections. They're also going after critical infrastructure,
Oh, yeah.
like power grids and transportation systems.
Right, financial networks.
All potential targets.
So now we're talking about real-world consequences.
Real-world huge consequences.
Yeah, not just digital disruptions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine a successful attack on a power grid, right?
Right.
I mean, it could cripple a whole nation,
Yeah, it would be devastating.
disrupt economies, cause chaos, threaten national security.
Yeah, it's like something out of, one of those dystopian thrillers.
It is.
But it's the reality we're facing. Yeah, it's interesting, too, because that line between cybercrime and cyber espionage, even cyber warfare, is becoming more and more blurred.
It is.
Like, was the Colonial Pipeline attack just a criminal act by DarkSide? Or was there, like, a nation state behind it?
Right. We don't really know.
Yeah, and that's what makes this whole landscape so unsettling, because we're dealing with this level of complexity and uncertainty.
Absolutely.
That's just kind of unprecedented, right?
Yeah.
But there's also a glimmer of hope amidst all this talk of cyber warfare.
There is. The white hats, the ethical hackers,
Yeah.
people like Marcus Hutchins who stopped that WannaCry attack,
Yeah, true heroes.
they're the ones defending our digital world.
Yeah, they're constantly battling these evolving threats.
And they're working so hard to keep us all safe.
So for anyone listening who's got, that passion for technology and a strong moral compass, this could be a really cool career path.
It could. It's a chance to really make a difference in the world,
Yeah.
to protect it from those who want to cause harm.
So as we wrap up this whole deep dive, what are the key takeaways?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that the world of hacking is never going to stop evolving.
Right.
It's complex, it's multifaceted, with all these different players.
Yeah, tons of motivations.
Tons of motivations. And we've seen how it can be used for good, for evil, how it can disrupt elections, threaten our critical infrastructure, but also protect us from those very things.
Right.
And as technology keeps advancing, the stakes just get higher and higher.
Yeah, they do. So what can we do to kind of navigate all this uncertainty?
Well, I think first, we need to be more aware of the risks.
Yeah.
Cyber attacks are more and more common. We all need to be taking those steps to protect ourselves, to protect our data.
Right. So strong passwords,
Yeah.
two-factor authentication,
Mm.
being wary of those phishing scams.
So
Many things
many,
we can do
so many things.
to just, boost our security.
And we need to invest in cybersecurity education.
Right.
We need to train that next generation of ethical hackers
Right.
to defend this digital world.
The digital guardians.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think we need to foster a culture of collaboration,
Yeah.
break down those silos between governments, businesses, and security experts.
So we can work together.
Exactly. This battle for a secure digital future is not one we can fight alone.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've covered a lot of ground here, right?
Yeah.
From those early days of hacking to the rise of nation states, the threat of cyber warfare, explored all these different motivations, the impact, and the challenges.
Yeah.
And we hope this whole deep dive has given you a better understanding
Yeah.
of this complex world of hacking and, maybe inspired you to learn more about this field.
Stay curious, stay informed, and stay vigilant.
Yeah, because the digital world's full of potential,
It is.
but it also requires our constant attention.
It does.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.